So in your program, you will see on the first page that there is an affirmation. And we will speak that affirmation together. Thank you. Love is the doctrine of this church. Our faith in each other is its sacrament. Working for justice and living with compassion is its prayer. Reverently we covenant together to stand on the side of love, to heal and not to harm, and to share hope with each other and with all the world.
Well, this morning we are going to do the water communion once again. Every year we do this, and many Unitarian Universalist congregations do this. And when we share our water in the common bowl right over there, it symbolizes that we are each separate people and we have our separate lives, but we are all part of a community. Now, you might know something a little bit about the water cycle. You ever heard of the water cycle? It's like when the clouds come over and they drop water on us. It's called rain. And it goes into the rivers, and it goes into the lakes, and it goes into the oceans. And then it evaporates, it goes into the air, and it makes clouds. And then it rains again. And it keeps going through that cycle over and over again. And then it keeps going. So we are part of this cycle as well. There's a cycle that goes through us. We drink water, and sometimes we get water from food and in other ways, and that water flows into us and it flows out, in and out, every day. So you might be aware that water is made of teeny tiny molecules. Very, very tiny. They're inside you. They're inside little vials of water. I brought a vial of water here. They're so tiny that you can't see them. You can only see them when they come together. Yeah, they are so very tiny, and they're called molecules. Can you say that word? Molecules, yeah. So how many molecules do you suppose each of us has inside of us? How many water molecules do we have? Well, let's see if we can figure this out. It's a big bunch. And we're going to kind of get in touch with that. So this little bottle is my bottle of water today that I'm going to pour in there. And I measured it, and it has 18 grams of water. 18 grams. And according to the scientists, 18 grams of water has 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd molecules in it. Is that a big number? Let's see how big a number that is. I've got that number right here. So 602,000 million billion. I think I'm going to need some help. So where did we go? 1,000 million billion trillion quadrillion, pentillion, sextillion. 602 sextillion molecules in this little tiny bottle of water. So how much is in us? Well, in us, is there anybody here who's around, 68 pounds? Think of a child. Think of a child. Is Jack about 68 pounds? How about if you stand up, Jack, and show us what 68 pounds looks like? No? Okay. So there's 68 pounds, and in a 68-pound human being, there are 18,000 grams. So this is 18 grams. There are 18,000 grams in a human being that's about that size. So we have to go to septillion, 602 septillion water molecules. Is that amazing? Wow. Now, we talked about the water going in us and out of us and in us and out of us. And every day, most people have about 2 liters of water going through them every day. So over a period of about 10 years, that's a lot of liters, isn't it? Guess how many molecules that is? Well, I'm going to show you. And I might need more help than Stephanie here.
Here we go.
So 22,000 million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, pentillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion molecules go through us every 10 years. So if you're 10 years old, that's how many water molecules have gone through you. And because of these huge numbers of molecules that are in us and that go through us, there are probably water molecules that went through who Abraham, thousands of years ago, who are in, those molecules are in us. And molecules that went through Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and molecules that went through Sacagawea, and molecules that went through Emerson, and molecules that went through Tot Green. Everybody know who Tot Green is? Molecules that went through Tot Green, whom we remember still going through us. Is that amazing? And molecules from people all over the world, because this big cycle feeds the little cycle that goes through us. Molecules from people all over the world, from people who are today in Florida, from people who are in Houston, from people who are in Bangladesh, from people all over the world, flowing through us. Is this amazing how interconnected we are with everyone who has been and everyone who is? And guess what? It's not stopping today, is it? So everybody who will be. We are all interconnected.
Beyond these sheltering walls, we are aware of the struggles and longings of many near and far in Florida and elsewhere. We are thankful here for the cooler weather We watch with dread the news of wildfires in California and the West, and of flooding across Florida and the Gulf Coast. Further afield, many of us feel a deep, burning anger at the ecological disasters yet again affecting so many of the poorest communities in the Caribbean, India, Sri Lanka, and here in America. At the suffering of so many without access to medicine, clean water, and food in Yemen, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Venezuela, Somalia, Syria, and so many other countries. We are shamed and appalled at the indifference and inaction of the world's media and the politicians across the globe. For many of us, our sleep every night is fitful as we recall the prisoners of conscience disappeared without trace in numerous countries, the murder of so many, such as Lori Gankesh, an Indian female journalist and activist who spoke out against extremist Hindu violence. Women and girls routinely harassed and assaulted throughout the world and then being met with contempt by males in positions of influence or power as having invited it. Corruption in Brazil, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, the list goes on and on. So many of our hearts and those of our neighbors are breaking to learn about the suspension of DACA, the Obama-era act permitting undocumented young people brought to America by their parents to remain here at their jobs or in schools with their families. Uncertainty grips Latino communities as the threat of deportation looms large, as families fear being torn apart in the name of national security and immigration reform. In spite of our worries and sometimes feelings of indignation and powerlessness, we know that we are blessed by the caring community here, the beloved community of UUCIL, that welcomes us, supports us, and helps us cope. And now, Bob is going to lead us in a child-friendly meditation.
So our first reading today is going to be from the Babylonian creation legend, the Enuma Elish. And this predates Genesis and it was written between the rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates. That's a long time ago. When on high the heaven had not been named, firm ground from below had not been called by name, not but primordial Apsu, spirit god of fresh water, their begetter, and Muma Tiamat, spirit goddess of salt water, she who bore them all, their waters co-mingling as a single body. No reed hut had been matted, no marshland had appeared, when no gods whatever had been brought into being, uncalled by name, their destinies undetermined, then it was that the gods were formed within them.
The poet Dylan Thomas takes a modern take on that commingling of fresh and salt, and out of which all the gods, everything was born, in this poem in October, which is about the morning of his 30th birthday. And I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read little parts of it. It was my 30th year to heaven, woke to my hearing from harbor and neighbor wood, and the mussel-pooled and the heron-priested shore, the morning beckon, with water praying and call of seagull and rook, and the knock of sailing boats on the net-webbed wall, myself set foot, that second, in the still sleeping town, and set forth. My birthday began with the water. Birds and the birds of the winged trees flying my name above the farms, and the white horses And I arose in rainy autumn and walked abroad in a shower of all my days. And so he's got all the days of his life behind him, this beautiful Wales coast, and he looks out and he gets higher above and he's sitting there, and suddenly the wind starts to change. And there I could marvel my birthday away. But the weather turned around. And I saw in the turning so clearly a child's forgotten mornings when he walked with his mother through the parables of sunlight and the legends of the green chapels. These were the woods, these were the river and sea, where a boy, listening to all around him, whispered the truth of his joy, the mystery of life in all its glory. Oh, may my heart's truth still be sung on this high hill in a year's turning.
And from the Tao Te Ching, the highest form of goodness is like water. Water knows how to benefit all things without striving with them. It stays in places disdained by others. Therefore, it comes near to Tao. In choosing your dwelling, know how to keep to the ground. In cultivating your mind, know how to dive deep in the hidden depths. In dealing with others, know how to be gentle and kind. In speaking, know how to keep your words. In governing, know how to keep order. In transacting business, know how to be efficient. In making a move, know how to choose the right moment. If you do not strive with others, you will be free from blame.
My birthday begins with the water, wrote the poet Dylan Thomas, describing, as we just heard, the matrix of commingled energies in Wales that nurtured his sense of self and his capacity for self-expression. Birds and the birds of the winged trees flying my name above the farms and the white horses, and I arose and walked abroad in the shower of all my days. On a wet, blustery morning, the poet wanders the hills and fields of his youth, reminiscing. It is in this spirit of remembering, recognizing, and reconnecting that we congregate this morning. And in the Dylan Thomas spirit of rising to meet and greet one another and to support one another, and to support the best, the most creative, the most elevated within ourselves and within each of our companions. Rising. And rising to renew and reaffirm our mutual connections of all kinds to this place and to each person among us, including new people who we are going to meet over the course of the next 10 months. So, welcome back. And welcome forward, too, into our shared future. It's good to be here among you, but it's a little scary, too. I've already heard about how my last sermon was too long. For me, personally, as a newcomer, of course, it's not only that, it's not just being assailed for loquacious blather. These are scary times, too. One doesn't have to be a fundamentalist to get the sense that we are all living in an apocalyptic era. Tomorrow we recall yet another anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Naturally, we think back and lament the tragic events of that day 16 years ago and much of what has transpired in its wake. Ironically, the week just past is also the 111th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's launching of the Satyagraha campaign. Satyagraha, soul force or truth force, nonviolent resistance, the religious and political philosophy Gandhi and his followers used to end imperialism, and that Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela also used in their respective struggles. A philosophy 180 degrees, mind you, from that of the British Home Office in 1906 when it was first launched, and 180 degrees from that of American President Donald Trump today. Another anniversary. This morning's water communion coincides with the 12th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, just as new and equally disastrous floods inundate the Gulf Coast and now much of Florida. Some people who became members of the Santa Fe congregation, where I served during Katrina and its aftermath, were forced to relocate because of that calamity. These Category 3 and 4 and 5 hurricanes remind us, for anyone who had somehow forgotten, of the destructive capacity of water. Water that we celebrate can also terrorize. While living in Pittsburgh in the 1990s, I became familiar with the terrible Johnstown flood of 1889. Water can unleash terrible fury. Some friends and relatives of UUCIL members are in the path of Hurricane Irma as it goes along the west coast of Florida. And we are waiting, they and now us with them are waiting to learn how their loved ones are and whether they will need to be on site very soon to help clean up and bring things back to order. They are all in our prayers. Yes, water can unleash great calamity. It can also unleash, or rather sow the seed of deep insight. As Bob reminded us in his children's lesson, people are close to 80% water, and they have a lot of molecules of it. Many. How many? What? Never mind. All living things are largely water and need water to survive and thrive. Water is the blood of the earth and flows through its muscles and veins, wrote the Chinese sage Kong Chung 2,300 years ago. California's 5-year drought that we have just recovered from also made this abundantly clear. Water is life. So it is not surprising that poets and philosophers of all times and places have used water as a symbol. Western philosophy derives largely from the ancient Greeks, who looked upon water as a natural phenomenon. And ever since, broadly speaking, Western thought has focused on physical, social, and scientific problems. That's one tradition. Asian traditions are different. In India, water is associated with creation. And Indian thought over the centuries has been largely associated with religious problems. As the 1982 Richard Attenborough film, Gandhi, clearly explains, Mohandas Gandhi considered colonialism to be a religious problem. And he considered resistance to imperialism a religious struggle. Chinese thought and philosophy is essentially humanistic. It concerns itself principally with social and ethical problems. Its two founders, so to speak, were Confucius, a practical, good government fellow, and Lao Tzu, of a more mystical and naturalistic frame of mind. Both of them looked to water for moral lessons, how to behave properly, and how to maintain right relationships within one's family, community, country, and the natural world, and so on. The Chinese concept of Tao is a little elusive to most Westerners, at least when they're first introduced to it. Essentially, it means that on which one proceeds, or something or someone goes. A path, a road, later expanded to method, principle, truth, or reality. All summed up in the common English translation, the way. So the Tao Te Ching, the way and its power. Alan Watts described Tao as nature's organic pattern of how all things connect. And water, for the Chinese, is Tao's most elegant metaphor. Alignment with this pattern is the basis of all ethics, believe Taoists and Confucians alike. How to align, how to be ethical. Be like water. Consider Lao Tzu, as read just moments ago. The highest form of goodness is like water. Water knows how to benefit all things without striving with them. It stays in places disdained by others. Therefore, it is very much like Tao. In choosing your dwelling, know how to keep to the ground, how to keep it down to earth. In cultivating your mind, how to dive into hidden depths. In dealing with others, how to be gentle and kind. In speaking, to keep your words. In governing, to keep order. In transacting business, to be efficient. In making a move, when. If you don't strive with others, you'll be free of blame. All will be easy. Being humanistic, Chinese philosophy focuses on wholesome behavior and what is good for society. People should spend time in nature, contemplating its pattern, believe the Chinese, because it makes us better, more ethical people, better parents, brothers and sisters, and better citizens. It also makes us happier. One of the best things about summer vacation is the chance it offers to lay back for just a while and ponder the big picture and our place in it. Sitting by the water's edge is healing. All nature is healing. Former Boston Globe columnist Linda Weltner is a member of the Marblehead, Massachusetts UU Church. In one of her columns, Weltner notes that the cosmologist Brian Swimme considers communion to be one of the underlying principles of the universe. All aspects of life are in profound relationship with one another, including humanity. When we sit still for just a minute and get in touch with that, we realize it. It is this communion experience, Weltner goes on, that allows us to digest plants, to decipher the language of people halfway around the world, to have love affairs with our pet animals. It's why we thrill to the sight of snow-capped mountains when we might just as easily be indifferent. We come with an inborn response to nature that requires only the right stimulus to leap into being. That's the reason that all it takes to convince humankind of the value of whales is to give enough people a glimpse of one. Maybe it's the fact that human beings are close to 80% water that makes us slow down and relax when we are at the water's edge. Helps us remember our connections to the rest of the universe and one another. This morning, we celebrate those moments of summer contemplation and celebrate, too, our reconnections to one another in this community. So it is that we resume our regular Sunday schedule by sharing a simplified water communion together. In some of our congregations, the water in our communion bowl includes a vial taken from the year before, as last year's water will be, as this year's would be in next year's. And so it goes on, and you realize, oh yeah, we're not just us here, but the community includes Dot Green and others who are no longer with us, and people we don't even know, but will be pillars and key participants in the years ahead. This morning, we begin our 60th year as a liberal religious community here in Livermore, and let our birthday, like Dylan Thomas's, begin with the water. I bring my vial. Carol and I went to Idaho Falls for the eclipse, and this water comes from the Snake River, and there it is. And I invite others to come up. It's not a contest about how exotic a place you went to. It's just an opportunity to say, we're back, here's what we did, it was fun, and I invite you to do it, and kids too. Nobody went anywhere? I can't believe that. Is that where you went in your imagination?
This is the water from my backyard, where my pool is big enough for me to go out the door, put my feet in it, and listen to the birds, watch the ducks fly by. So wherever I am at home, it's a wonderful place. We don't know where this water is from, but things work out for the one thing is like this and all. So we lost this water bottle however many years ago, and it was back, and it was our water bottle. We were sad, we were like, oh, we should buy our water, but things work out for us, so, This water for me represents family from Texas, from the state of Wisconsin, and then also from Camp Shelley where we have been.
Florida?
This water, well, almost all the water in the world can date back to the beginning of the creation of the earth. Anything but water. Here's some virtual water from Toyne Hard Lake in Tuolumne County, where Kurt and I sat by the lake for 6 days last weekend or so, and just were. Thank you.
Okay, this water represents the 11 you used, or 9 that went with us, to General Assembly in New Orleans this summer.
This water represents water from Black Lake in Idaho, western Idaho, on the border of Hells Canyon Wilderness, a very isolated and serene but intense place.
This water represents symbolically a look at the Merrimack River in Missouri.
This water represents the snowfall we had when we were in Flagstaff, Arizona on our first college visit for my daughter. And it was in April.
So this water is from the Ross Barnett Reservoir in Mississippi, which provides water to the people of Jackson. I brought it with the intention, hopefully our reservoirs will be full enough to provide water for all of us this year. And this symbolized the water at the Civil Rights Memorial, which I visited in Montgomery, Alabama. And at the memorial, there's written a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that says that our work for justice will continue till water rolls down, or till justice rolls down like mighty waters and peace flows like a stream.
I just want it to be the water. This is water from Maine and from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where my family is.
This is what represents the best on where one of the U.S. Navy. The water off San Diego is pretty much the same as the water in the Indian Ocean in any place.
18 grand from Oregon, where I got to see the eclipse, and from New Orleans, where I got to spend time with 4,000 Unitarian Universalists. Let's say the words together to extinguish the flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And if you'll hold hands for the benedictions, they started in Wales, so a Gaelic blessing.
And the children and youth would like to invite you to do this in their symbolic way, and that is to place your right hand facing downward, symbolizing the gifts we are giving, and your left hand facing upward, symbolizing the gifts we receive from one another.
Deep peace of the running wave to you, of water flowing, rising and falling, sometimes advancing, sometimes receding. May the stream of your life flow unimpeded. Deep peace of the running wave to you. And now we celebrate the gathering of these waters as we celebrate this community, gathered in the spirit of free inquiry, kindly support, and meaningful service as we begin our 60th year together. May it be a glorious year. Amen. And we give thanks.